This show contains mature content. The views and opinions presented belong solely to the people expressing them, and they do not in any way represent Goonies Comedy Club, the Crooked Pint Ale House, or any of their staff or management. Besides, every person on this show is a comedian, and they might just be joking. If you could be trapped on a desert, like a deserted island, right, with one person, why would it be me?
Why would it be you? Roll lunch, we're having lunch on the road, yeah.
Welcome to Road Lunch, where we sit down to have lunch with working comedians on the road. We're here at Goonies Comedy Club, located at the Crooked Pint Ale House in Rochester, Minnesota. My name's Andy Fisher, and joining me are comedians Ron Feingold and Corey Adam. Thank you so much for being here, guys. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So just to give you an overview of what we're going for here, we just want to get to know you a little bit as people, and especially as comedians, get to know a little bit about what it's been like for you to be a comedian, what your career's been like, trying to get a look at what it's like going through the process of being a comedian from a just getting started open micer all the way to a rock star, movie star, millions of dollars comedian, that kind of thing. We want to know everything in between as much as we can. And like I kind of said beforehand, feel free to answer these questions any way you want because none of this matters. So we're just here to have fun, all right? So
here's a long intro. Also, none of this matters.
Exactly. It's catching on. Okay, all right. First thing we want to know, where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I'm an Air Force brat, so I grew up all over the place, but I started in Bloomington, Indiana when my dad was getting his PhD, and then moved when I was 6 months old to Washington, D.C., and I was there till I was 6 years old, moved to Montgomery, Alabama, one of like 5 Jews in the whole damn state, and then and was there for 6 years, and then I moved to Colorado after that when I was 12. So, and then from 12 on, I was always in Colorado. And then moved to Minnesota when I met my wife on a ship, and that was in '96, and then moved to Orlando, which is where I live now.
You call Colorado kind of home?
I do. Everything that I love and everyone that I love really is there still. So, and I love Colorado. It's awesome.
Sure, cool. Yeah. How about you, Corey?
I'm not an Air Force brat, but we did move. I think my mom was a fugitive, but I'm not sure. So, I never met my dad as a kid, and when I was like 4 years old, we moved. So I was born up in Hibbing, Minnesota, which is like 3.5 hours north of Minneapolis. And then we moved from there to Denver for like a half year. I can't say how good Colorado is. I didn't really hit the bar scene at 4 years old, but But we moved from there to like Oregon and like Seaside, Oregon, Lincoln City, Oregon, and then Oregon City. And then I lived in Oregon City from when I was like 7 to like 12. And then we moved back here to Hopkins, which is where I spent from 12 to now. And it's weird hearing you say, so would you think that? And as I sit here, like maybe Hopkins is my home, but I never really processed that till this very moment. So we're making leaps and bounds on this lunch.
It's a cathartic day.
Okay, all right. Some of this matters, I guess.
And now I live in Minneapolis. No, sure. I live in Hopkins still. So
okay.
But I always say Minneapolis.
Sure. It's all one big ball,
I'm ashamed
right?
of my home. That's what I've learned. I'm just gonna go.
Okay, it's fine. I don't want to claim responsibility.
I need to cry,
for that,
and I'm not doing it on camera. All right.
Okay, getting into your comedy careers. How long have you been doing comedy, stand up?
I just started my 29th year.
Wow.
Yeah, I started when I was 19 years old. It was January 1990, and it was a comedy contest. And it was like a shot of heroin, you get that first laugh and you want to just get another one. So I was always trying to get on stage whenever I could around Colorado or contest or hit the road really quick and got down into the clubs in Denver and was a house MC in a lot of places and the Comedy Works as well as a place called Wits End and my home club in Colorado Springs at Looney's. It was called Jeff Valdez Comedy Corner at the time. And it's something else now, it's called Looney's. But I started traveling around once I graduated college and went full-time as a comedian as soon as I graduated college with a fucking degree. So, and then was on the road, making $150 a week, in Funny Bones, emceeing. And these were the days where you could travel as an MC or a feature. I mean, those days are almost gone.
Yeah.
A lot of people just use local features now and they don't put the features up. So those are the days where you can somewhat make a living, but I barely eked out a living. But 29 years in January.
Impressive.
Yeah.
How about you, Corey?
That's crazy. That's like almost a run of The Simpsons.
Almost.
I don't really know how I'm supposed to answer this question. I get asked it a bunch. Like the short answer is coming up on 11 years. But the thing about me is that when I was 18, I tried it for like a year and a half, and then I quit. And so like I don't ever really consider that part of the time when people ask me. Like in my head, that's not an equation. So it's like more because I did it when I was 18, and I went to Knuckleheads was the first place I ever did in Mall of America, and I remember just being absolutely horrifically stressed out and everything. And Matt Fugate was a comic at the time, and he was super nice to me and like helped me out about it, you know, just kind of like tackling it. And same kind of thing. It was like I was so nervous, but the moment my feet hit that stage, I just knew that's what I was supposed to do. Like I like drugs, and I'm always seeking the wrong kind of approval. But nothing that I've ever felt, drugs or otherwise, was as euphoric as just standing there and like just doing stand-up comedy. And so I thought I was like big, and I thought I was a really big shot. And my buddy moved down to Vegas, so I'm like, well, I'm practically famous. And at this point, I had laugh ears, which I don't know if people listening know what that is, but it's like when you first start out, a lot of comics have laugh ears, and that's where they hear laughs that don't exist. Like you've all seen that guy that like gets off stage and he's like, "Oh, I killed," and it's like, "Did you? Were you watching the same set?" Because I think you got killed, but like you know, and so I thought that I was really good, and I listened to the tapes now, and I was not. And I moved down to Vegas because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do this, thinking that I just go down there. And the funny thing, and I haven't been back to Vegas recently, but I hear the comedy scene's really grown now. But when I was down there, it was nothing. I mean, there were like 3 open mics, and they were all in casinos, and they had like a drape around it. Like you couldn't even hear, like you would be telling punchlines, and all you could hear is "We're in the Money." Like if I never hear that song again, it doesn't matter. And then so. Nobody cared about comedy because they're not going to go see an open mic in the back of some crappy casino when they could go see Jerry Seinfeld on the Strip. You know, that's just what they were there because people are vacationing. So I quit, and then I ended up moving back. And when I came back, I met this girl, and I thought I was going to get married, like have the job. I thought stand-up comedy was just something I did and I would never do again. And when we broke up, like there's a weird thing with comics, I feel like, that whenever something's really bad in your life, you kind of gravitate towards the stage. The stage is there for you in ways that a lot of real people never will be. And maybe they should be, and that's on us for being weird, you know, psychologically. But so then I tried it again, and then, you know, and that was at 28, and I was hooked at that point, and that was, like I said, that was about 10, 11 years ago, and I really wish I had that time in between back, you know, but
6, 7 years was it, you said?
Yeah, well, it was like, 18, it was almost 10 years actually between when I was doing it. Well, yeah, I guess it was probably like 8 years.
Sure.
But yeah.
What'd you do in that time professionally? Was there anything?
I was
kind of aimlessly wandering?
I was an assistant manager at a Radio Shack for a while. I sold timeshare for a second. That was real weird. I basically was just running around doing any crap job I wanted because, are we allowed to swear?
Sure. Yeah.
Because fuck work. Like I didn't know what I wanted, and I was going to go back to school, and I was an assistant manager at a Radio Shack, and I just I was so damn depressed all the time because I'm like, oh, I wish my dreams would have worked out. Well, I guess I'll sell batteries. Duh. So, yeah, nothing. I just was miserable.
Yeah. Ron, you said you started professionally right out of the gate, coming out of college. What'd you go to school for? Was it comedy related?
I got my degree in psychology. I was there on a theater scholarship originally, and then I got a bachelor's degree in psychology. That was my major. It was just something that I found interesting enough to study. But into my career in 1999, I got my master's degree in counseling. I got married in 97, and I wanted to get off the road full time. I didn't want to. I felt a lot of my contemporaries were losing their relationships to the road. I didn't want to be a victim of that. So, and I could see that coming if I was on the road as much as I was on the road 46 weeks a year when I met my wife. So. I decided to get a master's degree in counseling and be a counselor in a high school and do comedy whenever I wanted to and in the summer times. And then we moved down to Florida and I got a job in a high school and I was in charge of all these kids and I fucking hated it. It's like working in a prison with a principal.
Yeah.
And so I decided to make another album. I sing in my show. And so I decided to do another album. So I'd go to school, I'd be a counselor, and I would go and record until 7, 8 at night, drive another hour home, and then go do it all over again. So But yeah, the counseling thing was something that it was an attempt to get off the road that failed because I realized at that point that I'm not being who I am, and I need to follow my dreams. And it really made me realize that I really enjoy doing what I do, and I enjoy being a comedian. And all the bullshit that goes along with all this other stuff that I was trying out doesn't even pale in comparison with being a comedian and that whole life. So I decided to go back, and it gave me a better appreciation.
Sure. So I know you sing in your act. You use loop pedals to loop some of the stuff. How did these come along? Did you start doing that right out of the gate, or when did that gestate and pop out into your act?
I started out doing impressions in the beginning, and I incorporated a lot of music into that because I have a very musical influence into my life all the way growing up, and so I always wanted to incorporate that into my show because it's who I am.
Sure.
And so the first 5 years, I just incorporated it in, and then I realized that everybody in comedy that that was famous, that became well known, has some kind of niche, something that they do that is different than everybody else. Carlin is a wordsmith. Roseanne was the domestic goddess. Gallagher, even though he was known for smashing fruit, he's a fucking great comic, a great writer. And he had his thing. Everybody has their thing. Jeff Foxworthy has his thing. Larry Cable Guy has his thing. And so I realized I have to have my thing. Yeah. So always been a big fan of a cappella music, and I decided to incorporate that into the show. I can't play guitar. So I incorporated that into my show, and at first I started it with a CD player, and I would just push a button and do a song that I recorded in a studio.
Kind of like Kaufman.
Yeah. And then the looper came out, and I started doing it digitally with the foot pedal.
Sure.
And it revolutionized my show because I didn't have to rely on that, and I could do songs live in person. So I can create a song on stage and create it right there in front of the audience and not have to worry about doing a studio one.
Sure.
That's really cool.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. It's the comedy. One thing that you find the more you get into comedy is that nationally, across the whole nation, it's all one social scene. Everybody knows each other. It's pretty tight knit. Are there any comedians that I don't want to say unknown because they, a lot of people they're killing it. They've been doing it forever, and they're just not nationally known to a mainstream audience. Are there any lesser known comedians that you really look up to that you want to name drop, talk about?
Me? Oh, I mean, I'm sure. Given that this is like Minnesota, people here know that. But I mean, for my money, one of the funniest comics I've ever seen is Chris Maddock. And I swear on everything that if that man had ever made it to actually go to LA, there would be no Kyle Kinane. Like, he does Kyle Kinane better than Kyle Kinane does. And it's not like nefarious. He's not like stealing Kinane's anything. They're just very similar people. But sure. I mean, Chris Maddock is. When I started, I looked at this guy and I was like, man, this guy's really funny. And then I'm fortunate enough that I became friends with him. And it's so crazy when you meet people that are super funny like that on stage, and then you hang out with them and you're like, holy shit, this guy's even funnier off stage. Like he's almost like constraining himself to the like norms of what a comedian has to be. But like when he's just hanging out with you, he's a lunatic, and it's hilarious. And I've never laughed harder or anything like that. But I mean, I tell you, if I had a genie's wish, and I could just rub it and make people famous, the first two would be me, and then it would be Chris Maddock.
Could you rub it later, please?
No.
All right. That'd be awesome.
Hey, Aladdin, rub this. Granted.
This is a good story, and this is a good thing for comedians to hear, I think, because it's what made me realize what a crapshoot and what a lottery the show business is. I was in Salt Lake City, and there used to be a club there called the Comedy Circuit, and there was a comedian by the name of Ron Schock that was on stage, and he was part of that whole Texas Outlaw group of from Dwight Slade, Carl LeBeau, Sam Kinison, Bill Hicks, and that whole group, and Ron Schock was part of that group, and he's an amazing storyteller. He's kind of a Forrest Gump of comedy because he's had all these other jobs and all these other affiliations with a lot of other things. And I watched this guy do a 2-hour show and have an audience riveted, and it was one of the most amazing sets I've ever seen. And just watching a true master do this, and I was maybe 3 or 4 years in, and he never got famous, and he never became a name, and he never really got on TV that much, and nobody really knows who he is, and it's a shame. And what's made me realize, and it kind of changed my focus of what I wanted to do. I was a New York or LA guy. I was going to choose one of the two when I felt I was ready. And then once I saw Ron Schock get on stage, and I realized that you can be the most amazing comic in the world, and nobody's going to hear about you sometimes, And so I didn't want to take that chance. I didn't want to do that. And I had other things that I wanted to do in my life as an entrepreneur as well as a father. So it changed my focus on what I wanted to do.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll get deep on your ass.
No, that's
man.
okay. That's what we're going
crazy
for.
because
Yeah.
Bill Hicks is one of my favorite comics, and I'd never heard of this guy.
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly.
I'll have to look into him.
Look into Ron
super
Shack.
cool.
He's fucking brilliant.
When your whole life, it's not often, I think, that people feel like they have a singular direction, right? When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up? Was it always comedy, or was there something else?
Oh, it was always comedy for me. When I was a kid, I wanted to be on SNL like nobody's business. And when I turned 18, I actually, what originally got me doing stand-up was I went to an improv classes at the Brave New Workshop. And I'd always wanted, because in my mind, I was gonna be on SNL. Like that's what, like I was 100% sure that was what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I I went to improv because to me it's like, okay, I'll do the improv locally here. I'll move down to Second City where I'll do improv, and that's where SNL will discover me. And what happened was when I was doing it, I got like really pissed off because like I don't know if it's just Minneapolis, and I hear it's better now, but the people that were involved in the improv scene were some of the just worst people I've ever seen. There were people that could not make it as a comic, or they couldn't make it as an actor. So it was just like a bunch of JV people. And the thing, they put us in groups, and like we had all these like group play and all this stuff. And I met a few people that like were cool. And I'm like, hey, let's form an improv troupe, because I knew some people that had some bars, and I was gonna book shows and all this. And then what happened is like 2 of the members had kids, the other guy worked too much, and it just, every time we were supposed to get together and practice, it would just deteriorate. So like I got to this point where I'm like, what I'm trying to do is so hard anyways. Like he's saying, like you can be the greatest comic in the world, but if you don't have a TV credit, you're gonna waste away. I mean, Louis Anderson, who's from here, he talks about Bill Bauer, who was like a local guy that came up with him. Bill Bauer had a kid, Pat Bauer, and if Wild Bill Bauer. And if Wild Bill didn't have that kid, he would have moved to LA. And Louis swears up and down that if he had moved to LA, that would have been him. I mean, you have no idea who's gonna make it or how or why. And I think that's very wise that like instead of going to the different 2 cities, like, well, I'm just gonna grind out wherever I am. And so the mentality that I had was, I don't really care if I get good enough as a stand-up comic, I'll still get to SNL or something like that. But I was also kind of disillusioned with the whole process and the whole industry because of my experience. And so I just decided, all right, well, if I'm gonna do this, it's so hard and unobtainable that I have to put as little obstacles in my path as possible. And part of that just meant getting people out of like the troupe working. Like I can't put my future dreams and ambitions on the back of somebody else that may sideswipe them just to, like look after their kid. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But.
Yeah.
Namaste.
Cool.
You seem really resourceful, man. I think you could build a really good fucking hut. This is a good setup here. I think you could do pretty well. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Cool. Corey, you don't need to answer. I got what I needed. Cool. All right. My favorite question to ask, horror stories. Just tell me some of the worst experiences you've had doing comedy.
I was asked to open up for Grand Funk Railroad, REO Speedwagon, and Loverboy in an outdoor venue in northern Minnesota that was going to have 12,000 people outside.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, hell yeah, I wanna do that. And so I get to the venue, and it's this huge venue, and this is right around the second, what was that? Big festival that they had in the 60s with all the hippies.
Woodstock?
The second Woodstock was coming around.
Okay.
And remember Green Day got in that big sod fight with the audience? And there was just
covered
sod
in
being
mud
thrown.
and all that shit, yeah.
So the promoters of this concert said, hey, we don't want it to rain. If it rains, we don't want that mud thing happen. It just happened. So we're going to learn from that. Let's put River Rock down. River Rock.
Or we give people rocks to throw
let's
instead
give
of
them-
mud.
Let's give people weapons.
Oh my God.
So stupid. So people don't want to see a comedian during a rock show, and they didn't know that there was going to be a comedian, and they're mixing the setup and everything while I'm on stage, and they're, drums and risers and everything crossing in front of me, and nobody's caring. So, boo, you suck, rock, rock, rock. good night, everybody. I'm out of here. It was awful. So I have the credit. I did open for Grand Funk Railroad, REO Speedwagon, and Lover Boy, but it didn't go well.
Sure.
But I don't tell people that.
Did any of the rocks hit you?
It was a tight two.
No, it was really quick. It was terrible. It was so awful. But yeah, that was one of my worst.
Anything come to mind for you, Corey?
I mean, the problem is too many things come to mind. Like, you should have asked me like good moments. It would have been quicker. I got nothing that like tops like getting rocks thrown at you though. That's pretty great. One of my least favorite things, and I've done this a few times, but when I was in Vegas, I got a gig at the Circus, and they were doing comedy like right on the other side of the Adventure Dome, and so like they didn't have any like breakers or anything, but here's where it gets really fucked up. They were doing a comedy show in the same room at the same time they were having a buffet. And the buffet was basically like comped people. So you're up on stage and all you can hear is casino music. Like because I lived in Vegas, if I never hear the song "We're in the Money" again, it will be too soon. It's fucking everywhere. You can you can't fucking avoid it. But so I'm on stage, and at this point I'm still not even funny. And I go up there, and I'm just trying to like talk to them, and it's just these people that probably lost their entire fucking Vegas thing, trying to eat themselves even, just looking at you with just fucking hatred. It's like. And this one guy goes, "Who the fuck are you?" And I panicked. I'm in a flop sweat. And I said, "I don't even know right now, sir." And he goes, "Get off the stage." And I said, "Okay." And I got off the stage. And as I'm getting off, the guy there that had booked it, he goes, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I go, "What?" He goes, "Get back up there." I'm like, "All right." So I get back up there. And the guy goes, "What did I tell you?" And I go, "I think he's my boss, man." And then I just like sat there and he just fucking like, he just quietly would boo. But he would eat after he would boo. So he'd boo. Boo. And he's just glaring at me. And I'm up there eating my ass because I'm not funny. It's just fucking terrible. And I think like at the end of the set, I even started humming along with "We're in the Money" because like, especially early on when things are going bad, like you don't have enough material to make it up. Like, cause you're just like, cause you get panicked. So you rush through everything. So I had like a 15-minute set and I went through all my material in like 5 minutes and they fucking hated it. So.
Was that around about the time that you quit the first time?
It should have been. Like I think I went on to try it in Vegas for another 3 months after that. But yeah, I should have quit that fucking moment.
Think you would have come back to comedy if you did?
Yeah.
You quit in that moment? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, comedy, like it came, like I didn't even want to come back. It kind of just grabbed, like I'm sure you understand this too, is like this profession gets its hooks in you in a way that nothing else does. The people that are supposed to do this, in a lot of scenarios, there's nothing else that they could do. Not that like you can't get a degree and go do it, but like you're saying, like you get a degree, you go down this path and you hate it. I went back to school to be a history teacher and I ended up dropping out because of comedy. Like it has this way of gravitating you. Like it's
like herpes, you never get rid of it.
Yeah.
Well,
and it's a pretty bumpy road to the top.
Okay. All right. We've talked about the negatives. We can move on and kind of get to the good stuff. Any positive experiences that stand out? Like the way I like to frame it is, do you have that moment, that set you had, that realization moment where it just was, hey, this is why I do this, or this made me fall in love with comedy?
Yeah. Am I going first?
Sure.
You better, because I don't know what I'm going to say yet.
It's a tough business, and you have to get into it for the right reasons. And if you're getting into it for financial reasons initially, you should just stop right now, because you're not going to make a lot of money in this unless you're some kind of savant. But I really started realizing that I was having an effect on people, and that people really took what we say and escaped with us. When they tell you after a show that I had the worst week, or I just lost my dad from cancer, and I haven't, we have these comments all the time after shows that people come up and say I had the worst week. I had, you just made me forget about everything, and that's the thing that is a constant reinforcement for me to keep going with it. Spent from 2016 to 2018 off and on carnival ships. And one show that stood out in particular, we had a soldier that was back from the war, and his family brought him up on a trip, and I could tell that this guy, you know, he was digging the show and everything. He was really into it, and I wanted to honor him, you know, because I could tell he was a soldier. I was talking to him, and I wanted to honor him, and I sing the national anthem. I do an a cappella version of Star Spangled Banner. And man, when I was done, this dude had tears in his eyes. And this is in front of about 500 people. And he just comes up afterwards, gives me the biggest hug, and, you know, ended the show. And it was the coolest moment, you know. So there's, you know, cathartic moments like that sometimes that happen. And, you know, the things that people tell you, it's worthwhile.
Sure. Come up with something, Corey?
I mean, yeah, I think the longer you do this, the more it stops being one moment. And it starts being, like he's saying, like just different connections with people. Like if I was to pick one thing, like so when I started, I wasn't good, and I talked about that. And I had there's a comic locally named John Conroy, and he was funny. I have friends with Carmen too, but he pretty big asshole, and he really was good at telling you how everything was. And I remember I actually like used to hound him, and I had this grading sheet because I had this weird aha moment. And I don't even remember what set it was, but it was like the first time because I had those laugh ears, and I got off stage. And I was like, holy shit, I bombed. And it's like funny because in my head it was like, is this the first time I've bombed? And then I'm like, no, wait, have I always been bombing? You know, and it's just a weird moment. And so I made this grading sheet that had two different columns. And it's like what I was good at, what I was like bad at, what was better than before, what was worse than before, and then what I needed to work on. And I hounded Conroy because he hated me. Like I wasn't funny and I was kind of annoying and he fucking hated me. And I just hounded him because he was super funny, and I knew that like he was such a blunt asshole that if I could just get him to do this, he would just tell me point blank. He wouldn't pull the punches. And at the point where I realized I wasn't funny, the ego wasn't even a part of it. It's like just, I want to do this, how do I get better at it? And I think that's one thing that I do notice between the amateurs and the professionals is there's this weird compartmentalization that goes into comedy where you have to disassociate from the act. And I feel like the pros do that a little bit better than the amateurs, because it's like if somebody doesn't like your act, that's not the same as not liking you as a person. And that's hard to differentiate. And so I hounded Conroy for these things, and it was like a whole year. And I was getting better, and he was going. And I remember I had a set that I killed, and I sat down, and Conroy looks at me, and he goes, dude, I don't even know why we're even doing this anymore. Like, you got what you needed out of this. You should be doing one of these for me. And I think that for me was a big moment, because it was like one of those like pupil outgrowing the teacher things. So, sure. But as far as like sets and stuff like that, there's 100 different times where I talk about, like, I have stuff in my act about how I've never met my dad. And like I've had people come up to me afterwards like, I've never met my dad, that's a cool connection point. Or when I cut my finger off on a bandsaw, people like to show me shop incidents. And I love that interpersonal connection where the material, especially if you're focusing on your own life, it reaches across your life and into another person's life, because we're all just human beings going through this experience of life. And there's gonna be similarities. And for a lot of people, they come in, they're having the worst day ever, and this helps them forget. And that's like being able to just help people cope or escape from something, even if it's just for the duration of a 45-minute set, is just awesome.
Sure. Hecklers tend to be, right, like people who don't get all of the connections, right, and they think they need to force it. And I'm talking from an audience standpoint, right? Like hecklers are a common thing in comedy. Do you have a story, the most ridiculous or touching heckler moment? Like I've seen somewhere they turn it around completely, or not. Is there anything that you've had noteworthy?
I'm well prepared and even love hecklers.
I do too.
And the reason pardon me for bringing up music, but I have a song. I took the Real Men of Genius song from the Budweiser. Real Men of Genius. I turned it into a heckler song. So
really?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
It goes, I say, today we salute you, Mr. Stupid Comedy Show Heckler Guy. Today you decided to go to a comedy show and shoot your fucking mouth off. Did you show up tonight and there was a microphone on the table? Hell no. They say alcohol kills a lot of brain cells. Looks like there's a lot of alcohol in your brain with nothing to do. You are the snapperhead renegade of the audience, so please enjoy a cold glass of shut the fuck up. So we hope you get the picture now, you ignorant disturbance of the peace. Leave it to the professionals and enjoy the show.
Yeah.
So,
You get a lot of hecklers after you do that bit?
no, nothing. But the thing is, in my show, I also have a fuck you button. So I talk about people basically need to fuck off. That's the gist of my show. I have a school called Fuck You University. And I have a little fuck you button that I hit, and it's a little churchy sounding fuck you. So people know, I mean, you're not going to win in my show. If you're ballsy enough to heckle me, I'll ruin your life.
You brought a butter knife to a gunfight.
That's right. Yeah.
How do you guys, not everybody always has like the perfect set, right? It's their ups and downs. How do you handle bombing? What do you have a process? Are you just a
oh darn
move on kind of person, or how do you?
You seem to be the expert. Go for it.
Oh, that hurts. Actually, funny. I have 2 albums on crowd work, and he skips over the heckle question for me, but now I get the bombing question. Motherfuckers. What was the question?
How do you handle bombing? What's do you have a process? A lot of people have a formulated approach they take.
I always record all my sets. I always have, and I always will. I like to review my set after the fact. And I think when you bomb, it all depends on what I was taught through different people is that as a comic, you need to kind of have 3 different mindsets. You need to be able to be a performer. You need to be able to be a writer, but you also need to be able to be an editor. And the editor is the one that kind of gets sidetracked for a lot of people. But when you're going back and reviewing stuff like a bomb, sometimes you bomb and it's absolutely on you. That's when that happens, you need to review the tape, figure out what you did wrong, what you can do in that situation. Sometimes I've had sets where a heckler pipes up and I just lean into him too hard. And then the rest of the set is super awkward and weird because they watch me, they just watch me flip out like a dick on this guy for, one thing. And
so likability's gone.
But other times, you say something political and it's just the wrong comment in the wrong room. And those ones you just kind of have to walk away from I guess. I think sometimes there's things to be learned, but I also think there are times you bomb that there's nothing to really be learned. But I think it's important to review it, analyze which one it is, and then go forward with that.
Sure.
For me, it's an experience thing. I can feel when an audience is turning on me. So after, a while, I pretty much know when I need to call an audible. And when I call an audible, it's going in a different direction. So I have different tester jokes that I try out on an audience. And I usually know once I feel a vibe from an audience, and I know from what the other comics are doing where they're going. But if I get on stage and it goes in a different direction, then I'll know that I'll need to call an audible and try something else after this joke that I just threw out as a little lob. Didn't do as well, or if it did really good, then that's the direction I need to go in. So there's it just depends on what direction I need to go in and feel the audience out to do it.
Sure, read the room and go.
I think that's exactly it too. And as you get more material behind you, especially if you have a few albums out, you have some surefire bits that are going to work. What I find is that once you get down, it seems like right around 10 years, the bombing is really rare. It just doesn't, I'll have sets that aren't that good, but an overall bomb, I remember the last time I bombed was early January. And on the tape, it's super funny because you can hear me laughing because I'm like, holy shit, am I bombing? Because it just doesn't happen. Eventually you get to a point where you're proficient at this. Once you get proficient, you will have bad sets, but a bad set is not like bombing. You get
Raising
to a point,
that minimum bar.
Yeah, you get to a point where your minimum bar is rarely bomb. I think that at this point in my career, in a given year, and I do sets every night of the week if I can, in a given year, I'll bomb maybe 3 times. Maybe. Sometimes less than that. When I started, I'd do well maybe 3 times.
Yeah. Okay. Last question, and for the purposes of the show so far, probably the most important one. What advice would you have for the up and coming open micer, somebody who is just totally not a professional, amateur level comedian, but has aspirations of getting to the professional level, working like you guys?
Get out. Get the fuck out. There's too many of you. We're sick of you. There's too many of you.
You'll never make it.
Get the fuck out.
Go back to school.
I have nothing profound. Get the fuck out.
This is what we're...
No,
just mentor. Would you mentor your competition real quick? Hey, just so you know,
guys
we're
want your
actually
work.
outsourcing you guys. Could you just mentor these people? You scab hat helper.
No, my biggest advice is if you don't know who you are, if you don't know the direction that you want to go in comedy, but you also have to know who you are as a human being, and you got to know about yourself. So if you're one of those guys that's discovering yourself and you don't really know who you are, then comedy isn't really the place to figure it out, because those are the guys that are bombing, figuring that shit out on stage. You got to know who you are and know what your perspective is, and where you're coming from and where you're going, and what you want to connect to people with. So. Know that about yourself before you get into this, and then be honest with it with your audience.
Yeah, I mean that's really good. I mean, if you check those things, hit as many stages as you can. Like early on, hit every open mic that you can. Like don't you ever get to a point where you're like, I'm above this room. Because the thing that I see the most with new guys, and I even run a showcase for newer comics in the cities, I see people that they get about 6 months in and they get to a point where they're not even good yet, but they're kind of middling, and they just feel like they're above some of the shittier rooms in town. And there's no, like, you need to be able to hit every mic all the time, because the first step to doing this is you need to be comfortable on stage as you are off stage. And there's so much nerves and there's so much adrenaline that goes into this that eventually through time of doing it, and it takes time. I mean, I feel like that process probably takes about 4 or 5 years, but you get to a point where you can be having a side conversation with somebody, you're like, oh shit, I'm on, and you just walk up because you can just flip the switch of like, now I'm performer me, now I'm not me. And that's like it, and it all comes from just knowing yourself. Be true to yourself and try to hit as many open mics as you can. Record and write down everything.
Sure.
I get to know myself at least 2 or 3 times a day.
Yeah.
I've watched. I really like his live blog.
So okay, now we can.
I had 3 more.
We're right at time, so we can close. So
I think that should just be the cut. That's awesome.
The panic look. Oh, no. We're ready for the clap. Cool.
Is anyone ever really ready for the clap?
Okay, for this segment, we have joining us as comedian Zach Ashton.
Hello.
Local up-and-comer, as we like to call. That's a euphemism, by the way.
Should be down-and-comer then.
Comer is generous. Anyway.
It's got real weird.
Let's start over.
It really did. No, we're not starting.
No, we're not starting over.
We're not cutting anything.
Fine.
Yeah.
Fine.
No, we're not cutting it.
This is a creature of your own machinations.
It's okay.
Yes,
None
you
of this
did this-
matters.
you
None
did
of this
this to-
matters. It
that's
doesn't
what he
matter.
says.
I like your professional
When he says
attitude towards your
something
product.
embarrassed.
None of this matters. Doesn't
it's
matter.
not.
None of it matters.
It's a big steaming heap of poop. We're just going with it.
All right, let's go.
Okay, for this segment with Zach, we're going to play a little game. I'm going to tell you anecdotes, points, little stories about Zach, right? Okay, and you guys, you can ask him questions, right? And you have to guess whether it's true or false. I advise kind of splitting your answers. Like if one person goes true and you're not sure, go false, just for the sake of potentially scoring a point. Whoever wins when we get done with the questions gets to pick a shot for Zach to drink. And boy, do we encourage it to be gross.
We really
so
do.
that's what we want. He'll drink it too. Like it could be a warm cup of piss. Like he'll do it. Like it's.
I think I figured out.
All right, there we go.
Okay, let's.
I never
pickle juice.
contractually agreed to the piss.
He's just a good sport. That's what it comes down to.
He really knows how to play ball.
Yeah,
Okay, first story about Zach.
Grossest intern ever.
When Zach once met Bret Michaels when he was in town here in Rochester. Zach kept asking about Motley Crue in hopes of getting him worked up. and ultimately only got told to just shut up, man.
I feel like that's true. That seems like a total Zach thing.
I'll say false.
False? This one is actually false. He got kicked off the premises.
Yeah, he was very mad.
Wow.
Yeah,
Ron
I kept
scores
being
a point.
What's Tommy Lee like in person?
Wait, so it's kind of true. That's garbage.
Yeah,
That's a garbage entrapment.
There's technicality to this game.
Oh my God. So you have to.
No, he was actually. You know what?
So you've laced true stories with bullshit.
Yeah,
That's
he
how
was-
this
It
works.
depends.
He
It
was
depends.
nice up until I
Fuck
got in
this.
his face. It was more me. You know?
Were you drunk?
Yes. The Rock of
Shocking.
Love tour bus was there, and I remember this is a fun little fact about that though. I looked at him and I said, Brett, did you have sex with all those Rock of Love chicks at one point? And he just looked at me and he went, and that's when I went in on like, what's Tommy Lee like? What's Motley Crue? And then he just wasn't happy.
Next point about Zach. Zach was once, as a teenager, arrested for shooting paintball guns at cars coming down a busy street by his house.
True.
Oh yeah, that's true.
This one's actually false. Zach didn't get caught. He ran.
I didn't get caught. I didn't get caught.
I'm just saying true on all of them. I don't care who wins.
No points for anybody.
I believe that every horrible thing I hear about you is the truth.
Okay.
you should.
Next point about Zach. Zach was once arrested. Kind of common theme, you'll see. But Zach was once arrested for feeding part of a Girl Scout cookie to a police dog and ended up spending 10 days in county jail.
It's got to be true.
I thought I was drugging the dog. Like, why would I drug your dog, dude?
Okay, so I guess it's true. Can I answer? I'll say true.
Both true?
Yep.
This one, again, is actually false. He only got community service.
I didn't go to jail. And they accused me of drugging that dog.
It's awesome.
Get out of here.
What I love most about this game is how all this horrible shit is true. They're just getting us with semantical technicalities of what happened. But they're all true, stupid Zach stories.
Yeah.
No, we just had to blow the cop.
No, he got 10 inches.
Okay.
Technically,
Okay. Next point about Zach.
a big cop.
This setup piece is actually true. Zach works for the.
Go ahead.
Okay. Next point for Zach. Zach actually does work for the public school system in
True.
Rochester. That's
That one's true.
That's true.
True.
That's
Point.
true. But
Drink up, buddy.
while doing this, they were on a field trip once, and Zach he got an official write-up because he failed to stop a kid from falling into the aquatic petting zoo, right, with the little baby sharks.
Do, 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 do.
Which I've had to hear that song.
Yeah, bet. True. Wait a minute. You got written up?
Yeah.
Official reprimand. He got written up.
Because I was too far away from the student.
And it was,
but I
the kid was
watching
his
another
assignment. He
student.
works with like
Yeah.
single trouble kids.
So it's like they were, yeah.
I'm just going to go true the whole way.
Yeah.
Okay. This one is actually true. Zach tried to catch him, but ended up more just pushing him in.
Come running across, his legs are dangling. So I go to grab him by like the calves, right? But the impact kind of pushed him more in. Like, I had no way in it.
I made it worse.
Yep, dunked him, dude.
I'm helping.
Jesus fed me to a shark.
Good news, Timmy got baptized today.
In his own blood.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a score of 2-1. Ron's up. Corey, you gotta step up your game, bro.
Hey, man. I just believe the worst in Zach, and I always will.
Yes.
And if that causes me to lose this game, that's the only time that belief will be detrimental.
And it's not, he won't be wrong even if he loses.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh.
like, yeah.
This is a bunch of semantical crap.
Okay, next point about Zach. At the age of 5, Zach was banned from an in-home daycare after he snuck a beer from the fridge.
False, it was a joint.
Corey, you going true?
Yeah, I'm going true.
He's holding to his guns.
Yeah.
Okay, this one is it's actually false. He got banned from the daycare, but it was for hitting other kids, obviously.
That's my joint.
Yeah.
Ron scores another point. Okay, we are at 5 questions. Corey, we have 3 more questions, so you got some ground to make up to win the game here. So
I don't care.
okay. Zach once won an air guitar contest while on vacation in Las Vegas that he doesn't remember because he was blackout drunk and it was a sign-up, get-up event.
Yes.
Oh,
We just said yes, true.
yeah, that's true.
That one is actually false. He did not place.
No.
Oh shit.
Because I've never been to Vegas in my life. No. That's so sad.
Okay, nobody gets a point. All right.
Kind of seems like the theme of this whole podcast or web episode.
It's a web series. Take this seriously.
I wish I was dead.
Yeah, God, right? Like, none of this matters. How dare you disrespect it?
Man. It's a lot for me. to
That's
take
actually
in.
false.
Yeah.
Okay, next point about Zach.
Okay.
The earliest time Zach remembers hearing his father say, "I don't think you're mine," was after he lost a spelling bee in the 3rd grade.
False. It was 10th grade.
He
doesn't deny that it happened.
I'm gonna say false because his dad don't spell no good either.
This one is actually false. He remembers tons of those before that spelling bee. So each of you get a point. It's 4-2. All right. Which means at our last question, Ron has technically already won.
Yep, but we want to hear more gross
This
shit
one's for
about
fun.
Zach,
This
yeah.
one's for fun.
For the funsies.
Okay. Zach was once almost expelled for selling his prescribed Ritalin to his classmates in the 7th grade.
Oh, that's got to be true.
True? This one's completely true.
It's
You have to nail
completely
that. Yeah, there's no tricks in that one. That's
Giving them away, you know? And I was a bad drug dealer. My prices were not consistent, you guys.
so at the end of the game, Ron wins. It's 5-3. Ron gets to pick whatever disgusting shot you want.
What's the
Zach
one
to-
with the mayonnaise?
The mayonnaise one is.
Man, there's one with mayonnaise.
That one sounded absolutely disgusting.
There's one with mayonnaise, and it does sound absolutely disgusting.
That was one that I would
Tapeworm.
do. The tapeworm.
So, one part vodka, one part Tabasco sauce. You sprinkle it with pepper, and then top it with a dollop of warm mayonnaise. It's warm
I don't
mayonnaise.
know how we're going to warm it up, but I'm going to figure it out. So, okay.
It's called a tapeworm.
Yeah. hope you
Okay.
Now we got to do the
All right,
clap to
now we
close.
just do the clap to close.
Cool.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay, we're back. Zach has the shot.
Tapeworm.
If it's the tapeworm,
Maybe get it right
you want
in
to
the
check out
camera.
our social media. You can see close-ups of this. I think this is the grossest one.
This
This
is-
one
you
is
should-
the current
You
winner.
should like tilt it for the camera. Though, like,
Nastiest, yeah, right.
Like the
You'll
camera.
spill it. No, they can see the shot on social
Just
media.
tilt it over his
It's got
laptop.
a dollop of mayo in it. This one's horrible. So
it's vodka,
Ron,
it's Tabasco, pepper, and mayonnaise. Warm mayonnaise.
The mayonnaise is the tapeworm. Yeah. So Zach, down the hatch.
Here we go. One. All right, here we go.
Oh God.
Did he chew it? It was a.
Aim that way. Aim that way.
The pepper of it all. God damn.
Pepper's the worst part.
Like, my mouth is on fire. My whole body
Oh God.
now feels.
Nasty.
shit.
That's horrible.
I'm turning into the Hulk, dude.
Yeah. He's gonna be able to handle any shot by the time we're done with this.
I'm not
series.
even chasing
yeah.
it.
Wow.
Cool.
It's not
All right.
that bad. This is really hot.
Okay.
The mayo went down easy. I feel like we should have done a dollop. Like a whole.
Or a big
It was supposed
glob.
to be.
We can get you
It
more
looks
mayo.
like- yeah, we
Anyway,
can get
we're
you
not
more
going to
mayo.
keep. That's all for this
Get a
episode of Real
pickleback.
Lunch. Thanks for watching. My name's Andy Fisher. Thank you to the Crooked Pint. Thank you to Goonies Comedy Club, and especially thank you to our comedians, Ron Feingold and Corey Adam. Really appreciate you guys being here, guys. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you, guys.
And thanks for Zach Ashton, as always, for being my partner in crime and taking the nasty shots.
Yes, of course.
Having lunch on the road.
My name's Ron Feingold. My website is www.ronfeingold.com. RONF as in Frank, EINGOLD.com. And I'm going to be adding a bunch of clips over the next few weeks and a ton of comedy clips that I have neglected to put on my website for the past 6 years. So, ton of clips going on my site of things that I'm phasing out of my show and putting them into my website. So check out the website, and you can also get a fuck you button at ronfeingold.com too.
That's super rad.
That's super good.
I'm gonna get a fuck you button. That sounds rad. I'm gonna use it only for my mom. Hello, I'm Corey Adam. To read more books like me, go to www.coreyadamwastaken.com or follow me on any social media. Corey Adam Comedy. COREYADAM Comedy. If you don't know how to spell that, you're fucked. I also have an album that was #1 on iTunes. You can do the legwork on your own. Goodbye.